Hey folks, welcome back once again to Tips from the Server Room. This is episode number 138 for November the 18th, 2018. I'm your host Jack, and I'm going to help guide you through the world of systems administration, network administration, and all fields of IT. Please check out the website at tipsfromtheserverroom.com where you can comment on these shows. Also, to get the very best in Windows Server 2012 education, please check out our learning site at jtclearning.com. That's jtclearning.com. You can sign up and begin learning right away on how to set up, install, administer, and everything you need to know about Windows Server 2012. Today we got another packed show for you here that we're going to show you a little bit about joining a workstation to a domain controller. And it's nice to have test environments set up on your network that you can test out things like policies. You can test out the security policies, security groups, file shares, and make sure you can have everything working properly before you roll that out into your network and roll it out into your actual environment. It's better to test and make sure it's going to be okay, and then you can roll these policies and stuff out. But before we can play with policies and do all that great stuff with controlling the computer, we have to join the computer to our domain controller. So the first thing I would tell you to do is I would strongly suggest that you check out the video on YouTube, and that video can be found at 42, the number 4, the number 2, Technoman. And check out the video, and you know what? I'll put a link with the podcast here to the video so you can find it maybe a little easier. We will do that for you. So as you can see here on the screen, if you are watching the video, we have a Windows 10 domain computer. I set up a virtual Windows 10 machine, and I have a virtual Windows Server 2016 server running my DC, which we've looked at in the last show a little bit. We were talking about policies. What we're going to do is take this domain controller and, we're going to take the Windows 10 computer and join it to the server. And the first thing we need to do is make sure both of the machines are running on the same network, and I know they are. But I do have a internal DNS server running basically like you probably do on your router if you have a home network set up. And it does a lot of the internal DNS stuff. But I want my Windows 10 computer to be able to see the DNS for the server to make sure that it can pick up the server name and everything. So to test this, we are in the dashboard here of the Windows server and click on local server. And the computer name is AD-server1. The domain I created was ad1.server. And what we need to do first is we need the IP address of this particular server. So we can do that a couple different ways. I tend to like to use the command prompt. Don't want to do that. I like to use the command prompt just to do an IP config, just so it's really quick. And here's the IP address, 192.168.1.35. So now we're going to switch over here. Let me move this out of the way. To our Windows 10 machine. I'll click on the networking icon down by the system clock. Go to network settings. And we should be able to get to it under the change adapter options. We're going to right click on our network connection, go to properties. And we'll let this open up here. Get the computer to keep up with us, we'll be better off, right? Be a lot better off here. There we go. So this is our Ethernet properties. It could also be your wireless properties. We can also join the domain over the wireless, which we do a lot. And get this to open up here. There we go. On Internet Protocol version 4, right? TCP/IP v4. If I double click that, you'll see here, hopefully you can see this on the screen. Normally it says obtain a DNS automatically. Well, right now, like I said, it's obtaining the DNS automatically from my router. So we're going to go to use the following DNS server. We're going to put that address in from the server. 192.168.1.35. 1.35. All right, that's all we really need on there. So let's click OK. And we'll click OK. There we go. So now that it's pointing to the proper DNS, what we can do now is we can open up a command prompt on our workstation. And we want to confirm that it is in fact pointed to the proper computer, not to my router anymore. So let's open this up. All right. I wish I could make this stuff a little bigger in here. Let's see here. Properties. Font size. Maybe 36 should be good. Of course, we just made the box bigger. That's all right. There we go. Just so you can see this working a little better. And what we're going to do now is we are going to ping, but not the IP address. We're going to ping the computer name, which is AD server 1. If the DNS is working properly, we should be able to get a ping response. And there we go. So now we know that we are actually pinging this virtual domain controller I have. So now there should be no reason why I can't join this workstation to that domain controller. So let's go ahead and close the command prompt out. We are done with that. We will close this out. There's a lot of different ways you can join Windows 10 to a domain controller, but what I found is the old school menuing system is still here. The way it worked is if you go to this PC and right-click on this PC, go down to Properties, you'll get the old dialog box back up that we used to get. All right, so right now its computer name is Virtual1, and it's on a work group. Now, a work group is if you have a small group of computers, you can have them on the same network. They can talk to each other just by simply using a work group without having to use a domain controller. So each computer has that ability to talk to each other. But we're going to go to Change Settings. And what we're going to do here, you can use a wizard to join a domain or work group by clicking on Network ID and go through the wizard. Now, that's okay. If you're kind of new to it, maybe that would be a great starting point for you. But I've been doing this for a long time, so I go to rename this computer and change its domain or work group. I click on Change. Now all we got to do is join it to the domain. But what I also want to do is give it a new computer name. We are going to call this, let's say HR Computer 1. Maybe it's in our HR department. And we are going to join it to our domain, which is ad1.server. Once you do that and click OK, it's now asking for the credentials, okay, to authenticate to the domain controller. So we will use our administrator and the password. And you see the domain is ad1.server. Click OK. And if everything's going in our favor, we should be able to hit it. There it is. Welcome to the ad1.server domain. So now we know this computer is joined to that server. Click OK. And click OK. Click OK. And that is going to allow us to restart this machine. And when we restart the machine, go ahead and restart it now. Then I'm going to pause this video until this machine is restarted. Okay, now that our computer is rebooted and back up, you can see where it says on the bottom here now, sign into AD1. All right, and I went ahead and pre-signed in because we know that when we sign in for the first time, you get that please wait as it's building our profile. So let's go ahead and log in here. Then I wanted to point out one other thing to you that we do at the schools all the time because it really irritates me how Windows does this, but it's just a feature-rich part of, I guess, home using. So there you go. So now if we take a look, let's go back into our file manager. And we'll go back to this PC. right click on this PC, go to properties. And you see now computer name, HR Computer 1, full computer name, hrcomputer1.ad1.server, and our domain is ad1.server. So yes, we are actually now connected to our domain controller. Now with the domain controller, I'm going to bring that over for you here. Let's bring our domain controller back over. And we are going to have a look here. So if you go now into computers, now we got users, right? We got computers. We can see now that the HR Computer 1 is now joined to our domain controller. This is how we start applying the policies and all the security features, or how we can interact with that machine, as well as with the user account itself. As you can see, I created a new user account for myself down at the bottom, Jack. So I'm ready to roll with that. So let's go back to computers. And it is right there. To move a computer from one group to another, it's very, very simplistic. I don't know if I started, company computers, HR department, that's where we want to put this computer. So if we right click on the computer and we click on move, this is our list of groups or organizational units. And if we look through where my company computers, HR department, we're going to move it to the HR department because that's where the computer resides, in the HR. And there it is. So very, very easy to move computers around through your groups. And that is perfect. That is working. Now, the one thing I could tell you here, I'm looking to see how long this podcast or video is running. I don't want to bore you to death. But the one thing I like to do with the domain controller is at the school I told you, we're going to close that for a minute. We don't need that. Is if we click on the start button and log out, sign out. This is one thing that bugs me, and I see it all of the time, is that when a user sits down at the computer and opens the computer up, you can see here where there's other user, there's the last user login, and then there's mine on the domain, okay, which doesn't tell me anything about the domain, but that is mine, irregardless, right? So the way we can actually fix that is now that we have the computer joined and we have it in the HR department, it shouldn't be hard for us. And this is live, folks, so we're hoping it's going to go okay. We are going to go to our group policy management, our GPO. And if we look at company computers, HR department, we can go to HR department here and we can actually create a new policy. So we're going to create a new policy and we'll call this last user. Okay. All right. So first of all, we got to spell last user, right? Last user. All right. Click OK. Choose another name. I already have this one in here somewhere. We'll just call it last users. Then if we take this policy and we right click on it and go to edit. And what you're looking for here, since I've done this so much, I should be able to find it very simple. Simplistically, go to Windows settings. And the computer has to keep up with me a little bit here. Windows settings, security settings. It should be under, move this out of the way, local policies, and then security options. And there is, underneath down here, let's look for it here, interactive logon. And it should be called, it says do not display last username. Okay. So you have to double click on that. You click on define it and then enable it. All right. Because it's not defined at all, so it won't do anything. Or if you disable it, it will not do anything. So we're going to enable that. Click on OK. So it's enabled. Now that policy is enabled only on the computers under the HR department. That's where this policy is residing. So you would think at that point everything should be fine, right? So again, this is kind of live, and I'm not doing any editing here, but we are working with the podcasts. So I'm sorry about, like I said, you would be better off on this podcast particular if you would look at the video. And I know a lot of you are in your cars right now going, what is he clicking on? So what I was in was group policy management. I did click on company computers. That's the OU where we put this HR computer. And then I clicked on HR department. That is where I put the computer at. I moved the computer to the HR department. I right-clicked on HR department, and I went to create a GPO in this domain and link it here. And then I created a GPO called last users. It's also nice when you're creating policies, and we'll talk about this down the road a little bit, is I used to one time create all my policies in one big default domain policy. But it's better if you have an issue to create each policy based on what you're doing. You're pushing a shortcut, you're mapping a drive to somebody. Then if something goes wrong, you don't have to go back through all those policies trying to figure out where did you put that. You can just delete that particular policy. So that policy is there now on the computer policy. And what we're going to do here on our test machine, I'm going to log back into this machine. And policies are pushed out, I believe it's every 90 seconds. Policies are pushed back out to your machines. But we like to, if we make a change like that and we're sitting at a machine, it's much better for us. Okay, let's see here. It's much better for us to force that policy down, right? So we're going to do a GP update in the command line. So we're in the command line. We just type GP update space / force. And that was doing, it's updating the policy from your domain controller. So we're forcing that update. Instead of it waiting for it, instead of powering the computer off and powering it back up, we can refresh it and we can see if this is going to work. So there it says user policies updated and the computer policies updated. So we are good to go. We will close that box out. I don't think if we just log off, I don't think we'll see it. Let's see. Sign out. I think we will have to reboot the machine. We'll take a look here and see what it does. Nope, there you go. So we didn't have to reboot the machine at that point. All we had to do was log out. And now you don't see those other users down here. Our students don't see those. They don't know Sally was sitting here last or Billy or Bobby or whoever. And now they just have the AD1. So they're logging into their domain. So if we log into the domain, and we can just log in, it should know us. We should get the same desktop and everything is good to go. So it worked exactly as I planned it to. And as I said, this is very much a live video. I didn't have to edit anything out of there. Thank goodness. Everything just worked. I can tell you, sometimes we've had computers out there on the network. We'll talk about this down the road a little bit, but sometimes there's a computer in the network, and what would happen is you can't get it to log. It will not join a domain. It will not join a domain. One thing to look at, believe it or not, is check your system clock. Make sure it matches the time on your domain controller, because different administrators set those up differently for security reasons. If your time is greater than or less than 5 minutes, it may in fact not join. It may in fact not log on correctly. So something to think about. But that's it. And we'll look more at policies down the road. That's why I wanted to set this test environment up to play with policies with you with the podcast. And I know it's hard in the podcast, folks. I'm sorry about that. But I do want to get more hands-on with this show. And I do want you to go and look at the videos on 42 Technoman on YouTube. And, I think you'll get more experience by seeing this done step by step by step. And it's proper ways of doing things. So thank you so much for watching. The PC is now joined to our domain controller, and we did see how to apply that one simple policy to get rid of that last user logon. I really, that burns me. And so many of the labs, we have policies for all of our labs. We have policies for all of our students. We have policies for all of our teachers. And I go individually to each group instead of just doing it across the domain. And I kind of build that individually for me so I can test it in the lab, make sure everything's good. but I always get rid of that last user logon thing. That's got to go. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Thank you for subscribing and downloading to the shows or these shows. A lot of you have emailed me and said, Jack, how come you have not done a Server 2016 course? And it's just time. It takes a lot of time to build those courses out. It took a ton of time to build the 2012 server course. And folks, honestly, if you can manage, install, set up, and administer Server 2012, you're going to be just fine on Server 2016. There's new features we can talk about later on down the road. But for now, I think, as far as setting it up, putting groups together, doing policies, working with your DNS, working with your DHCP scopes, and all that great stuff in Server, you're going to learn it very easily with the Windows Server 2012 course. And again, check it out at JTC Learning. JTC Learning. And if you want to support this show, and I really hope that you do, and support these videos, because I'm producing more and more of these that's going to help you learn little tactics out there in your network. Please remember to use my Amazon link, and as at tipsfromtheserverroom.com. When you buy anything from Amazon, a small portion comes back to this show, and you pay the same low price. All right, thank you very much, and I will talk to you next time on Tips from the Server Room. Bye-bye for now, everybody.